Test. Test. Turn it back. Test.
Are we good?
I think we're good.
Welcome to the March 5th, 2024 meeting of Soquel Creek Water District Board of Directors. Calling the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Director Balboni,
Present.
Vice President Luther,
Present.
Director LeHue, Director Christensen, and President Jaffe.
Present. Okay. So no public hearings, correct? So this is opportunity for board members to remove items from the consent agenda.
Yeah, I wanted to please remove 4.4.
Okay, 4.4.
MOA,
Any
yeah.
others? Okay. Yeah, thank you. We might have somebody in the audience who wants to speak on this, on the items besides 4.4 on the consent agenda. All right, Becky, you are on.
Thank you. My name is Becky Steinbrenner. I do have comment on item 4.5 regarding the construction of the Gunnison Lane Well project. I did receive a notice from your your staff, Mr. Pollard, about this, and I sent him several questions to which he did not respond, so I've sent it to your board. I have a lot of concerns about the impacts on the neighborhood. I see that there will be a very high noise wall put up. How is that going to be supported? Is it going to be metal posts pounded into the ground like what happened at the Willowbrook injection well that very much disturbed the residents in the area because it went all night? And I guess the thing I want to know is why isn't there any mention at all of potential MTBE impacts in this area? Your district is very well aware of that and did some studies and had to do work with the State Water Board to help monitor the problem. But it is within the area of this new Gunnison well. And there's no mention at all of any monitoring or testing or anything for that. I respectfully ask that that be included in the contract regarding the Gunnison Lane well. And I also want to know where the source of the development, the well development water will be. If it's going to be potable water, you have to extract the
Thank you.
chlorine. Thank you.
All right. Any other public comments? Okay.
I'll move
Yep.
approval of the
Approval.
consent other than 4.4.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Did staff want to respond to the comment at this time or at a later time?
Not now, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we can do a voice vote, right? So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. So, oral and written communications. The opportunity for a member from the public to talk on something that's not on tonight's agenda. Becky?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's also the time when I can comment about correspondence that you have received.
I think you can, yes.
Thank you. I want to bring to your board's and staff's attention and the public.
As long as it's not about an agenda item.
Correct.
The appropriate place would be when that agenda item is.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much for that clarification. The letter that your board received from the Sierra Club is very concerning to me and should be to you regarding the Laurel Street Bridge Pure Water Soquel Conveyance Project Habitat Impact. I have spoken to you about this a number of times with my concerns. I have raised it in my litigation because this is a result of the district not collaborating with California Department of Fish and Wildlife for meaningful and enforceable mitigations. California Department of Fish and Wildlife was never consulted on the bridge, the Laurel Street Bridge pipeline conveyance attachments. And initially, your project was going to dredge under the San Lorenzo River, and then without any public notice, it switched to being attached to the Laurel Street Bridge. I've talked with you about the impacts on the swallows. It was only because a citizen, Miss Jane Mio, brought it to someone's attention, not yours, because you haven't paid attention to this. But the biologists actually stopped your work because of the impacts on the swallows on the bridge. Now, I ask that you read this letter that you have received from Mr. Michael Guth from the Sierra Club. Observation indicates a steep drop in swallow nests beneath the Laurel Street Bridge since the Pure Water Soquel installation work began, from an annual average of 50 nests to approximately 15 after the implementation of the Pure Water Soquel project. And now the facade that is being put up to cover the pipe does not address this issue still. So I beg you, please, follow the law, work with Department of Fish and Wildlife, and continue this project with a meaningful mitigation for the impacts that it is causing. This is serious, and I don't ever get the feeling that you care. For example, Director Liu is not even listening. He's looking down. So please read this, and I urge the members of the public to read it as well. Finally, I will just draw your attention also to correspondence that I sent regarding $14,000 a month credit card fees that your district is paying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have read the letter from the Sierra Club, and I would bet a lot of money that Tom has as well.
Yes, I have read the letter as well.
And I have to.
What are you going to do? How are you going
Please
to?
sit
No,
down.
just a
Ms.
second.
Steinbrenner.
I'm just letting you know. No, let's not go back and forth.
Okay, but I want
not the right
to
place.
respond.
You,
Please be
Becky.
respectful and sit down, Ms. Steinbrenner.
This is-
I am, Mr. Duncan.
Please. Thank you.
all right. So, yeah, I'm not going to respond to you, Becky, if this is what it leads to with back and forth. But that brings us to any board members, any oral communication? None? Okay, so now we're on to reports. There are no reports. And then administrative business. So there are no conditional and unconditional will serves. And that brings us to 7.2, authorize entering into a service contract for operation and maintenance at-risk services for the Pure Water Soquel Advanced Water Purification Facility.
Good evening. Thank you, Board. I'm going to be partnering with a couple people tonight on the presentation, and then, of course, we're also available for questions. But tonight, this item is item 7.2, the Pure Water Soquel Operations and Maintenance at Risk Service Contract. So we do have a short PowerPoint presentation, and I'd like to just outline that in terms of the slides. We're going to do an introduction. We'll have a purpose and background. We'll go over the project, obviously the Pure Water Soquel project, and give an update. And then we'll go into the key contract terms and the fiscal impact, and then wrap up with the possible board actions. This is something I know that Ron is always very keen on, just in terms of an executive summary. We often don't know if we'll have a lot of people in the public that may be new to understanding Pure Water Soquel, so we do have a little bit of information just about our groundwater conditions, and that the Santa Cruz County mid-county groundwater basin is critically overdrafted. We also are always available to share information related to the Pure Water Soquel project, and specifically for the purification and treatment facility at the Chanticleer site. And then, tonight is about the operations and maintenance at risk contract that we are asking the board to consider for approval. So before I turn it over to my colleague, Cameron Costigan-Mumper, who is our Associate Water Resources Manager at Soquel Creek Water District, who will be giving the PowerPoint presentation. I also did want to introduce a couple other people that are in the audience as well as online. We do have John Rickerman and also Paul Reel with Jacobs. Just raise your hand. We also have Anoop Shah with Brown and Caldwell. And then, of course, we have Glenn Price with BBK, who is helping us with the contract terms and conditions and is doing the legal advisement as our counsel. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Cameron.
Right. Thanks, Melanie. And thank you, Board. Road less traveled to sustainability is what I think about when I look at this picture here of this bridge spanning across this ravine. The district's come a long way, and the Pure Water Soquel project is nearing completion at this point. The next phase in this journey It requires courage, determination, and also balance, in my opinion. But sustainability is within reach. I commend everyone that's worked on this project, including the board members who have approved it, and that embody this philosophy and making sound, rational decisions. With that being said, the purpose of this presentation tonight is really threefold. We want to present the service contract for the Operations and Maintenance at Risk, or OMAR, services for the Pure Water Soquel Advanced Water Purification Facility, the AWPF, as I'll probably refer to it throughout this presentation. We also want to discuss some of the key terms of the service contract and the fiscal impact to the Soquel Creek Water District, or the district, and authorize the district to enter into a 10-year OMAR service contract with Jacobs Engineering Group. Next slide. Thank you. So we face some major challenges with groundwater in our basin. As we know, it's critically overdrafted. It's one of 21 basins within California that have such designation. And there's a mandate to become sustainable by 2040. In addition to being critically overdrafted, it's also considered a high priority basin because groundwater is the sole source of water. We also know that there is strong evidence of seawater intrusion along the entire Monterey Bay coastline. So to help mitigate these issues and achieve sustainability, the district developed the Pure Water Soquel project. Can you scroll down just a little? Oh, thank you. There's basically three elements to the project. You have your conveyance infrastructure project, which I don't know if you can see. There you go, thank you. It's the purple pipeline. It's not recycled water purple pipeline, but it is purple on this image here, which is essentially conveying your source water from the Santa Cruz wastewater treatment plant, or the Santa Cruz facility, all the way to the advanced water purification facility that's denoted there by the blue star. From there, you have 3 injection wells. The pathway to get to those injection wells is the lighter blue pathway there, and the blue dots are the injection wells themselves. That's where the purified water will be delivered into the basin. And in the next slides, I'll talk about the benefits and also the process itself. So we know that the benefits of this project are manyfold. We show them here summarized. Since the source water for the Pure Water Soquel Advanced Water Purification Facility is coming from the Santa Cruz facility, what that means is you have a reduction in the discharge of the Santa Cruz facility's effluent into the Monterey Bay by approximately 25%. We know that injecting this purified water into the basin is going to provide a seawater intrusion barrier, as well as a reliable and drought-proof water supply, and the project can be accomplished pretty quickly, also using green energy. It promotes local economy, it produces high-quality water, and the facility has been designed to be scaled up, to be expanded in the future. One thing that I'd like to add to that list of benefits there is also innovation. I think that is definitely a benefit of this project. When projects like this are completed, it sets an example of projects that are important, and it shows others that they can be completed, they can be accomplished, and that they can be successful and effective in their goals. So what you're seeing here is what we call a process flow diagram. It's really just the path of water that we're going to follow. Most of what we're focusing on tonight and with Jacob's contract will be what you see in the gray dashed area there. That's the advanced water purification facility. But it's important to note that the source water is coming from Santa Cruz along the dark blue pathway, about 5 miles of pipe. So initially it gets pumped through some strainers, makes that 5-mile journey over to the AWPF. There's an initial pretreatment set of ozonation to help remove some of the contaminants that are otherwise present in the source water that can impact other downstream unit processes like the ultraviolet and advanced oxidation process, as well as the reverse osmosis system. So from there, it passes through microfiltration and then through reverse osmosis to remove things like bacteria and viruses. And then it moves on to disinfection in the ultraviolet and advanced oxidation process. At that point, the water is very pure, and we have some post-treatment, removing carbon dioxide to balance the pH, adding in some minerals, and then we're pumping it into the SWIP wells, or the seawater intrusion prevention wells. What I wanted to also note on that's okay. What I also wanted to note on here is this is a very simplified process flow diagram. It doesn't encompass all of the system operation. And I think that's important to note because the district does not have operators currently that hold or possess the required state licensure to be able to operate a facility like this, and they don't have the experience of operating a facility like this. But there are complexities within the system that Jacobs does have experience operating and managing and maintaining. Next slide. So all that process that you just saw, it's really contained in this kind of small footprint that you see here. On the left-hand side, there's a picture of what the lot used to look like prior to the development of the advanced water purification facility. And it's a pretty small site, but like I said, there's room to expand. The back portion of the building can be entirely removed, and additional unit processes can be added onto there, all without actually having to expand some of the chemical tanks that we'll be using. We'll just have other deliveries. I think that was all I wanted to say about that, yeah. In terms of a program schedule, well, here we are, March 5th, and there we are, a red line. And you can see the conveyance project is nearing completion, and that will phase into the completion of the seawater intrusion prevention wells. And then while that is occurring, we also have construction continuing at the AWPF itself. Pretty soon, we expect to start some preliminary startup and commissioning of those facilities at the AWPF, of those systems there. And all that, and the O&M agreement that we've been working on with Jacobs and been developing is coming to fruition in April, basically. And then at that point, we'll be transitioning, a slow transition over to Jacobs so that we can eventually begin operation, so the Jacobs can begin operation of that facility in what we hope to be mid-November. And you can't see it because there's a screen up there, but that mid-November date, is when we anticipate the first delivery of purified water to the Mid-County groundwater basin.
I think just one thing to note on this, I know when we were talking about giving a program update schedule, this is just 2024. As you guys are well aware, there were many, many years prior to this. That isn't on this diagram, but this is just a real narrow view of what's in store in this coming months.
In terms of contract operations, procurement for this really began back in 2019 with an RFQ that was issued. There was a selection committee that was put together with board members and district members alike, where CH2M Hill was selected in 2020, and CH2M Hill being a subsidiary of Jacobs. Jacobs themselves, they have operation and maintenance services for more than 200 water and wastewater facilities in the U.S., and within California alone, they have more than 35 years of experience. Contract operations at other facilities like in the city of Gilroy, city of Auburn, Turlock Irrigation District, and Twin Oaks Valley. They've been involved with this process ever since the beginning in phase 1, where they provided professional advisory services during the design of the Pure Water Soquel project, and into what we're in now, phase 2, supporting the design builder during the construction, and then they will also be continuing that during the commissioning and acceptance of the project and the facilities themselves. But for today, I've highlighted phase 3. That's the next phase. That's the one that needs the courage and determination and balance, right, to operate and maintain the AWPF over the long term. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Glenn, to talk about some of the key contract terms.
Glenn, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Cameron. I'm Glenn Price. I'm a partner with Best and Krieger, and I've been working with staff to draft and negotiate the O&M agreement with Jacobs. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight and just go over summarize some of the key contract terms, given that the contract itself is very lengthy and technical, but we're just going to give you some of the highlights here. So the term of the contract is for 10 years. And the term is broken into two periods, essentially, a baseline period and an OMAR period, which is the at-risk period for Jacobs. The baseline period is really for Jacobs and the district to work out all the kinks on operation of the AWPF, learn the most efficient way to run the facility in terms of the utilization of chemicals and electricity, and also making the best use of the water that's available from the Santa Cruz plant. So during that baseline period, we'll be kind of collecting data and determining kind of all of these various factors of how the plant's going to be operated for the duration of its life in service. Once that period's over, the OMAR period will kick in, and that is where Jacobs will take full responsibility for the operation of the plant based on the data and the kind of processes that have been determined during the baseline period. There is an option for the district to renew the agreement for an additional 5-year term if it desires to do so at the end of the 10 years. In the event that the district decided at some point that it would like to take over operations of the plant for some reason, we did provide that flexibility, and it can do so on 180 days notice. There is an early termination fee, and the purpose of that fee is to compensate Jacobs for its investment kind of in the project, in the plant, going up to the commencement date, because Jacobs actually isn't being compensated by the district until the commencement date. So it's making that investment, which it would expect to be reimbursed for over the 10-year period. So that's why the early termination fee actually starts at a higher number and then will go down over time as Jacobs is actually getting reimbursed for that initial investment. Next slide, please. So at all times during the term of the contract and following it, the assets, the AWPF, the Education and Operations building that's located on site, all of these assets are owned by the district. Jacobs is responsible for managing those assets under the O&M agreement. And we'll get into some of the details of that on other slides. As I mentioned during the OMAR baseline, we will be setting the operating standards for the plant for the various items I already mentioned, efficiency, use, and also making the most effective use of water. This is particularly important so we can determine what parts of the year are best for shutting the plant down for maintenance activities, and also potentially having the plant reduce operations if there's not a lot of water available seasonally. And this will lead to more efficient operation of the plant. Next slide. So the primary purpose of the agreement is obviously operation and maintenance, and Jacobs will be responsible for the operation and maintenance of the AWPF. Right now, as part of phase 2, they are working with the design builder to create the operation and maintenance manual. And this is the primary document that'll be used to set the procedures and standards for the operation of the AWPF once we commence operations in November. At that point, Jacobs will switch from a development position of putting that manual together along with the design builder to actually implementing and running the plan pursuant to that manual. And an important component of the operation and maintenance is obviously preventive and corrective maintenance, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Under their maintenance, repair, and replacement provisions, Jacobs will be responsible for all of the cost of doing routine maintenance up to a certain dollar amount, and that's part of its fees for the O&M. There's then also major maintenance, repair, and replacement, and this is all of the various parts of the plant that need to be replaced on a periodic basis, including filters, UV bulbs, various components that do need to be replaced from time to time. And Jacobs, with the input of the district, is developing an MR&R schedule that'll set forth the time frame for that. And as part of that, there's an ongoing 5-year forecast for the district of what the expenditures will be on an annual basis, looking out at least 5 years. Next slide. So obviously an important component of operations is staffing and training. And Jacobs will be staffing the plant during regular business hours with 6 full-time employees. When the employees are not on site, there is kind of full ability to monitor the plant remotely. And there will always be people on hand to monitor the plant if there's any kinds of alarms or difficulties or issues with the plant. Jacobs staff will be available to handle those on an after hours or an emergency basis, as well as all of their activities when they're working full time at the plant. We do have provisions in the agreement that if for any reason we had to substantially curtail the operation of the plant or even shut it down for a period of time, let's say because there was a problem at the Santa Cruz plant, that we are able to reduce staffing and work with Jacobs to do that, to try to save money during those periods when we might be non-operational for a long period of time. Jacobs is responsible for obtaining all the necessary licenses and certifications for their staff, and they will be hiring qualified and experienced individuals to work at the plant that have all those requirements. In addition to the individuals that Jacobs will have at the plant, we also have the benefit, pursuant to the agreement, of working with Jacobs' extensive knowledge base of engineering and water quality professionals, water treatment professionals throughout the United States. So that's very helpful. If anything happens that, staff or employees at the plant are not familiar with, they have a very broad and diverse knowledge base to draw from all of Jacobs' other operations. Jacobs will be having semi-annual workshops and training for district staff, and we thought that was a very important component that's been negotiated with Jacobs, where they're going to be helping our staff, our water quality people and engineers to learn how the plant works and have a good feel for how it fits into the overall operations of the district. As I had mentioned earlier, with respect to the coordination contract administration, Jacobs is available 24/7 for an emergency response if they need to be outside of the normal business hours, and they will be regularly working with staff at the district. Next slide, please. Now, one thing that an important decision that was made by the district was to handle its own procurement of electricity and chemicals. And this was done so that the district could do that in the most cost-effective manner and would not have to rely on Jacobs and pay administrative and overhead costs for those services. And that helps the district to save considerably over the life of the contract. So those will be separately handled by district staff. During the baseline period, they will be, as I've mentioned, we will be kind of establishing what is the appropriate levels of chemical, electrical use. And once that is set, part of the OMAR, the at-risk component of this for Jacobs, is that they will then operate the plant kind of within those thresholds that we've established for efficiency. And if Jacobs goes over that electricity or chemical usage for reasons that are not excusable, let's say because of something that's the fault of the district or the result of water quality issues from Santa Cruz, if it's instead just an issue of the plant's not being run as efficiently as it should, then Jacobs is on the hook for any excess cost of usage of electricity and chemicals. On monitoring and reporting, this is obviously a very important part of the contract because we have to stay in compliance with all of the district's permits and with the state. So Jacobs will be collecting and preparing all of the samples on a regular periodic basis as required by the district's permits. The district has decided to actually control the laboratory testing itself and that's to give it greater control and more accountability for not relying on Jacobs to provide it with the key testing, whether the plant is in compliance. So Jacobs will collect and prepare the samples, and then they'll be shipped to an external lab that has been hired by the district, and the district will then have control over those results, which will go to the district and to various regulatory agencies. In addition, the Jacobs will be preparing, various reports for the district from time to time on the operation of the plant and providing data so that the staff can monitor whether the plant is operating efficiently and per our expectations under the O&M agreement. Next slide. So that's it. So if there's any questions, would be happy to answer those from the board.
Thank you. Any questions from the directors?
I think maybe we can just have Cameron summarize this
Okay.
slide and the next
Okay.
slide. Want to hit on the fiscal impact and then the motions?
So you prefer to summarize and then ask the questions?
Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Glenn. So in terms of the fiscal impact, for the baseline period, what we're projecting is $4.6 million for at-risk services provided by Jacobs. That will apply to actually 3 fiscal years because we're anticipating the injection of purified water to begin in November of this year. And since the baseline period is for 24 months, it will span those fiscal years. And so we'll be spreading those costs out. They will also be an annual inflation adjustment that will occur. And then other than that, we want to come back with a revised budget for fiscal year 26 and 27 that will be updating the board on near the end of the baseline period after we have some operational experience and had an opportunity to optimize the AWPF. As Glenn had mentioned, this includes the removal of certain responsibilities from Jacobs for cost-saving purposes, such as electricity, chemicals, analytical costs, et cetera.
Thank you. So, thanks. Of course. So there's more?
No, we can end here. This is just the summary recap where we just wanted to address that we did have the staff recommendation. And then, of course, we have the possible board actions for you to consider.
And that's what's exactly
board
was in the
is-
packet. Okay. So clarifying questions before we open it up to public comment?
I have a couple. You do too? You want to go ahead?
Oh, go ahead.
Why don't you go?
Still.
Okay, all right. One of the questions I had was when I was reading through it, it was saying it was $2 million a year, and then it went to 4.6. So I have a question about that difference. And then I'll just give them all to you, and then will we have any input on their staff? Like, say there's something they're doing we don't like, or do we just address it with them and then they deal with their staff? That's another question. I need to know, I was curious what an NTE was. And then I think there was a part on liquidated damages that I think you explained, Glenn explained that I think I understand now. But it said on the very last, on page 53 of the packet, it says Jacob shall pay liquidated damages in the amount of $1,500, and then in parentheses it says $4,000 per million gallons of production shortfalls. And then it says such damages will not be payable to the extent that the shortfall results from a period of non-operation where liquidated damages are imposed pursuant to incidents of noncompliance. So just, clarify that for me. It's just kind of a little bit of double negatives and I get confused.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. There's a couple different types of liquidated damages in the agreement, and that difference between that 1,500 and the 4,000 was numbers we were negotiating with Jacobs. Jacobs has agreed to the 4,000 per acre foot if a shortfall in water production is the fault of Jacobs when their plant is operating normally. So the kind of the qualifications or the double negative really has to do with two things. One is there's another form of liquidated damages where if Jacobs is not operating the plant within the quality requirements for the discharge of the purified water, and this is due to Jacobs' fault and not an issue with, let's say, non-compliant water coming in from Santa Cruz, so that it would, in which case it would not be their fault. But if they're not operating the plant properly or having difficulty meeting the quality requirements, then the plant will be shut down because it can't operate if it's discharging water that doesn't meet quality requirements. And a different liquidated damage is in effect during a period when the plant is simply shut down for that. So this is separate from the water production liquidated damages. And, that's really meant for a case where the water is of the appropriate quality, but it's not the proper volume. So that liquidated damages would kick in when it's a volume issue. The other liquidated damages apply when there's a quality issue.
And then my other questions were just what an NTE is, and then
The cost.
and the input on staff and the cost.
Yeah, I can talk to the cost. So the approximate $2 million, so that was, it's a little over initially. Every year there's going to be an adjustment for inflation that's going to be applied to that number. So then over the 3 fiscal years that we're looking at, there's going to be 3 adjustment points basically to account for that. And so that's how you kind of get from what we're saying is roughly $2 million to start with, and then for more than $2 million on the second year to kind of get you to the $4.6 million.
So the 4.5 is for 2 years.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
I think to answer the other 2 questions that you had, one was on NTE. I believe that might have been in reference to a not to exceed.
Okay.
Just from an acronym, and we should have caught that, so I'm really sorry that acronym slipped through. The other one was about input on staffing, and I think I will, I'd like to tee that off, and if, John, if you want to come, because I think it would be good to hear from you as well. We've been, working with Jacob since they first proposed on the RFQ and the RFP for coming on board to help and assist with the operability considerations of phase 1 during pre-design and design work. And at that time, they had assembled a team of engineers, professionals, and operators. We got to meet one that we were hoping, could have been the operator that would have been here at the project. Unfortunately, sometimes the stars do not always align with when this project comes online and when that lead operator and plant manager would have been available for us. So we've talked about that a little bit, about how will they be procuring. That is kind of this next period of where the contract approval would take place, and obviously they're not really going to be commencing until Black & Veatch has completed their work. The plant is passing all of the acceptance testing, and startup commissioning, everything is done. They will then commence their contract, and so between this time and when they take the plant over is when they will be going through that hiring. I do know that we will be a part of that, and I'd like to hopefully you can explain a little bit more on that.
Sure. Thanks, Melanie. John Reckerman, Jacobs. Good evening. So,
Is the button on?
is it on? I think it's on. I just
Great.
get
You
closer.
just have to put your mouth on it.
All right. Yeah, hiring is always one of the most exciting parts of starting one of these, what we call greenfield projects. So there's no existing O&M staff for us to retrain to our best practices. So we're starting fresh, which is also a great opportunity. So Paul and I actually have been extremely active on this. We had a number of interviews last week in anticipation of board approval. And we've actually had some offers accepted for some senior level advanced water treatment certified operators in California. So we're making excellent progress on this, Melanie. It's been interesting, but we are excited that we have dates and contracts and commitments moving the right direction. So we're excited to do this. As was mentioned by Cameron earlier, though, in the event we are still not fully staffed with our on-site local team. We have 2,500 operators nationally, and I have a team of quite a few of them that are road warriors, and we show up and do what we need to do. Paul's in the middle of a startup of a similar kind of a project right now in Washington State, where we have a fleet of people descend on the site to make sure it starts up properly. So this is what we do, and we're looking forward to it here.
Carla?
Yeah, I think I had that one question about the 4.6 million too, but actually I was curious about the 6 personnel and whether that would, if they're working 40-hour weeks, how that would overlap for weekends and nights. Because, new facilities and new machines, new anything often have bugs and things like that. It feels like there's, that's something that we should anticipate and prepare for. I was just, one of my concerns. Excited to have this project getting started. So I'd like to hear a little bit more discussion on that because it seems like sort of a skeleton staff is proposed. I mean, and then I was also just curious about whether there'd be any interaction with the staff, the personnel at the Santa Cruz wastewater treatment plant to train them and orient them on the thing, on the project and the production. So I wanted to hear about that. And well, the last one is probably really hypothetical, but I wanted to know what would happen with this contract if we expanded production. Because there wasn't any mention of that on how that would work, whether the same personnel would be able to handle more production or whether, what exactly would happen. Is there anything in the agreement to mention that? I know there's a termination, a no-fault termination, but is there corresponding expansion? And then I guess that's it for the moment. There's probably always going to be questions, but those are the ones that hit me when I was reading it today. Right.
Glenn, did you want to answer the contract one related to expansion?
Yeah, the contract has some fairly lengthy provisions about capital improvements, and most of that verbiage it sets up a framework for the district and Jacobs to work together on those. But the district is always the final arbiter of making decisions because of the cost of having capital improvements. So probably the ultimate capital improvement you could have at the plant would be an expansion. So I think we would anticipate at least during the 10-year term that if there was an expansion, that Jacobs would be continuing to be the O&M provider for the expanded facility. I think that would require more staffing, likely. We would have to work out the details of that in terms of cost. At the time of the expansion, there would have to be an amendment to the contract to accommodate that.
At this time, the contract is just for the size of the project. As we all know, this is a very defined project of 1,500 acre-feet per year. That is what the EIR is covered. If anything was to be expanded, we would have to go ahead and do an additional EIR, some additional design work. We would have to open up and discuss the operations considerations of the facility with Jacobs. But as you also know, that the project was contemplated to be increased. So the footprint is large enough. as Cameron mentioned, how we could expand it. But at this time, it's not included in this operation.
Even if there were a minor expansion, even that would fall in within the confines of the existing plant. How would that work out?
I would say that, and I'm foreseeing that, of course, we'll be doing, a good working relationship with our contract operator, that if we were to operate and identify that there was an expansion, we'd first have to define what that would be, how long that would take. The process to expand does take a while. And then we would start to do that discussion and identify if they could do that with the existing staff or what kind of increase that would be.
Yeah, and I would add any environmental review or actions that would need to be taken.
I do think you also asked the question related to the collaboration and the working relationship with the City of Santa Cruz Public Works Department. Again, we have had an ongoing working relationship with the city during the design efforts, as well as while we're in construction, with the engineers that work down there, as well as the operators, the electricians, the SCADA and the communication technicians. I foresee that will continue. They are on our meetings currently. I believe they currently are. As Glenn mentioned, we will continue meetings once the plant is operational, both monthly and weekly. So not only will collaboration be with the third party OMAR, the City of Santa Cruz staff, and also our staff, who will be doing the operations and maintenance for the pipelines and the seawater intrusion prevention wells.
Did that,
The question was whether the currently proposed staff is sufficient to respond to emergencies off hours.
Yes, you do want to tee that up? I will say, as John comes up, we have always really listened to the board as well as the community related to staffing. That was something that the NWRI panel addressed, that they wanted us to make sure that we were ready and prepared on all steps of the process: design, construction, and operation. Ron and I have probably called every single agency that has operated an IPR project in California and even beyond to get lessons learned, to get information, to get tips and tricks, and even today we were on calls. We're constantly trying to learn from other agencies and what they're doing, whether it's contract operations or whether they are doing the operations in-house with city or county staff. We feel that the size that we have proposed with this contract has been with that input from other agencies, as well as Jacobs and their depth, and that it is sized. We've also been working with the state. This facility, which has been identified in a lot of our planning documents, like the EIR, the engineering report, our operations and optimization plan that we're submitting to the state, is sized so that it can be accommodating a less than 10 million gallons per day facility, which this facility is. We're 1.3 or 1,500 acre feet per year. Very, very similar to Santa Monica and several others that are about the 1 MGD size. And then, John, please feel free to add more.
Thanks, Mel. So, Director Christensen, to your other question, during that startup period where things are a little chaotic, we do have in our initial budget, which is partly what Glenn described is something we invest in up front. We bring in a large team of experts from all over the country on a variety of things: technical, instrumentation, HR, safety training, all kinds of different experts for as long as it takes until we're stable. So that's part of the investment we make.
That's reassuring. That's exactly when all the
Perfect.
thing might happen, most likely. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also add, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Cameron will be working with them, on a daily thing. We call him the master coordinator in a sense, so he could almost look like him as an extension or at least interwoven. The other thing is as Melanie touched on, the ideas of being budget conscious and prudent, but not at the sacrifice of water quality or anything like that. the thing that's one of the things that's appealing about a company like Jacobs is their deep bench, right? So they don't have to keep 10 people on that when they can keep 6, and then when they need 4 more, they can call them in just periodically versus if we ran it, we might need all 10 all the time, and that wouldn't be the most efficient. So that is, I would say, probably one of the greatest attributes besides they have vast experience in operating a facility such as this.
Any other questions from other directors? So Carl, I had the exact same question of whether, the staffing was sufficient for that initial period where bugs do or could possibly show up. So, question for Glenn. So, if when we start up, it becomes obvious that we do need to have people on site for weekends or increase the staffing for a period of time, how is that accommodated? Is that an amendment to the contract?
Well, right now it's contemplated that Jacobs has recommended the number of employees. So if they needed to have people working just for normal operations because of issues with the plant, that would really be at Jacobs' risk. We are paying them a fixed fee for operation of the plant. Now, if there's something extraordinary that happens, let's say a new contaminant has worked its way into the water discharge going to Santa Cruz, and it makes its way to the plant in the treated water that comes to the AWPF. And this is not something that was previously contemplated as part of the treatment, or it impacts the treatment to the quality standards that we're required to provide under the permits. Then there is provision that we would engage Jacobs experts to deal with those unknown or unanticipated issues on a time and materials basis. But with respect to just getting the plant up and running and kind of dealing with those kinds of issues and overtime, that is part of Jacobs' fixed fee.
Okay. And then, if I may, since you've made the trip here, can you educate me on other plants that are similar to ours and what's happened with them?
John Rickerman, Jacobs. So we were looking over our list recently, and there's some recent additions. It's probably 15 or 20 sites of various sizes doing direct, indirect, potable reuse, Title 22 style reuse, commercial membrane treatment systems. There's a lot of variations on the theme. Most of the sites we run are actually larger than yours right now, although we expect expansion at some point. The largest one is 66 MGD, so about 50 times bigger than this facility, and that's in Australia.
And what types of issues show up with the smaller ones? I know it's a small sample size.
The issues tend to be the same in my experience. It's instrumentation. That's a lot of the challenge. These systems are largely computer controlled. So the redundancy you need on the control systems and the attention to the instrumentation that those control systems rely on, that's really where the pinch point is for these facilities. And that's going to be a lot of our focus during startup, is making sure the instrumentation and control systems are correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess it's time for public comment then. If there's anybody in the audience with initials, I'm just joking. Becky?
Well, for our guests here, do not be fooled into thinking that because how many people are here that nobody cares. People are very worried about this. And so anything that you can do as an operator in conjunction with the district to make any and all data, positive and negative, publicly accessible, you will be helping the public gain trust in this agency because we really don't have any now. I am happy to learn why the operation cost more than doubled from the initial estimate of $2.5 million to $5.5 million. This explains it. This is the first time we've had an explanation. Even during the rate hearings, it was not explained. So I am worried that Jacobs will only be there 5 days a week during business hours, and the rest of the time will be running itself under instrumentation. I remember when the marina One Water project released 9 million gallons of raw sewage into the bay because nobody was there and they were depending on the instrumentation, and it failed. And that was with redundancy. So we are very, and I speak for the public, we are very worried about these sorts of things happening and going into polluting the groundwater. You make the comment that it's very pure water, but it actually isn't. The final anti-degradation analysis shows that it will be injecting nitrate and chloride and who knows what else, because it isn't. It is an unregulated thing that's not reported to be, has to be reported. I'm happy to learn what this at-risk means because that was not explained. I'm the only one here. Can I have one more minute, please? Director Hugh is shaking his head no. That's not.
Becky, if we make exceptions, we're going to continue to make them. Let's stick to the 2 minutes and go with emails with your further questions.
That no one answers. No one answers. Where can I see the contract?
Thank you. Would you please be respectful and sit down? Ms.
I want to
Steinbrenner?
know where
Ms.
I can
Steinbrenner.
see the contract. There are references to section of the
Steinbrenner,
contract.
please sit down. We'll
They
have
are
to ask
not
you to be escorted
included
out.
in the board packet.
Ms.
Where can I
Steinbrenner,
find it?
please sit down. Be respectful of everybody's time here.
I have
Thank you
been
very
very
much, Ms.
respectful
Steinbrenner.
with you,
Thank you.
Mr. Duncan, for many, many years.
And please
Thank
sit
you.
down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other board questions after hearing the public comment? If not, does anybody want to make a motion or no motion?
Second. Did I say that loud enough? I second? Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, my mic was not on. Sorry.
All right. So this is a resolution. So does that mean roll call? Or is it? No?
Josh, is this a resolution that requires a roll call vote?
That's the board's pleasure. It could be a voice vote or we can do it by roll call.
Let's do it by voice. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. That brings us to 7.3. Approve professional services agreement and scope of work for architectural and engineering services for the Pure Water Soquel Education and Operations Center renovation. Taj?
Yes, good evening. Although Adam Bayer behind me has been the one really leading this effort and will be leading it through completion. So I'm going to introduce Adam Bayer to lead you through this item, if that's okay.
Thank you, Adam.
So you want me to tell you what the project is about?
Whatever you think we need to know.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, assuming that we read.
Yeah, we have read it entirely.
So just
And the
like
fact
a
that-
30-second overview
So the main
to the motion.
The main elements of this project are what's called a change of use, which changes the building from its current use as a glass shop to more of an office arrangement, which is going to entail likely seismic upgrade. So it has to essentially bring it up to code, to current code, as if it was built today. That's the primary focus of it. The other two elements are the operations center component, which is essentially the secure storage area and the location for the 6 operators or the 6 contingent of staff, to be able to be in the upstairs and in the secure storage area. The main element there is that it's got direct access off of Chanticleer, not through the main gate, but directly off of Chanticleer, and then there's direct access through the back of the storage area. And then the other component is the education center, which is the what was formerly the showroom floor, and the main component there is how it's going to connect to the treatment plant itself. One of the things, Ron, that you had mentioned when I was at the office a few weeks ago was the notion that the real thing to see there is the plant itself and not the education center. So the focus is really to make that, in large part, I see it as very similar to what's there now, but really to make that connection to the plant so that the attraction is really to get into the plant and be able to see the process. So those are the main components.
All right, thank you. Any questions by directors?
I mean, I might just say that, Jennifer and I were on the subcommittee to kind of look at the different ones, and it was really an interesting process, and Adam and Cameron was involved in that as well. And we were pretty happy with the approach that this group took. So anyway, and the qualification.
Okay.
I would add that there was at least one late entry on recommendation, and it was really positive. So it seems like every turn we've had so far has essentially resulted in positive feedback.
References. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Great references.
All right. Are there any questions? Does somebody want to make a motion? Well, public comment. No public comment. Any questions or a motion?
This is just a quick question. Are you going to change the footprint? Is that part of the proposal? Okay.
It's one of the key aspects. Is it's the 4 walls stay the same. It's interior. Some of the the elements, the seismic elements, it's not designed yet, but it's usually at the connections, floor, ceiling.
Okay.
Those types of things.
Yeah. Good raw material there. I've been in there many times. So.
I'll make the motion and to proceed.
I'll second.
Okay. You got that, Tom and Carla? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Sorry.
Passes unanimously. So that ends the administrative business, and we now go into closed session.
I believe there was a pull.
4.4.
One more?
4.4 was pulled. I
Oh,
believe.
yes, thank you. All right.
So I'll be glad to provide a quick overview or answer any questions, whatever the board's pleasure is regarding item 4.4, renewal of memorandum of agreement for the Santa Cruz County Integrated Regional Water Management Program.
All right, so Jennifer, you're.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. I had 3 quick questions. The first one is the MOA commences January 1st of this year, but it's March 5th. Just wondering about the delay.
Yes, this goes out to numerous entities that are part of it. So they're trying to get us all corralled. I don't know. I don't even believe we're the last to bring it to the table.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I also was wondering about the plan of the 108 projects shows the status as of 2022. And I'm wondering if there's anything that's more current or up to date, or if that was the last time that they did that.
definitely things have evolved within that list, but I'm not exactly sure. But just to back up to the big picture, what the big change that has happened with this group is that it used to be that we would kind of like fight as an entity or our own regional IRWM for funding. And now the state divvies portions up to each one, and then we work within our own region to how the money's divvied up. And you can see for Soquel Creek Water District, the return on investment's been substantial when you look at, we roughly
Yeah.
contribute about 12 grand a year, and we've gotten back over 3 million. So
Okay. Yeah, it looks like an amazing group.
they do good work.
And there's all these environmental stewardship groups, including the County Parks Ecology Action, Watsonville Wetlands Watch, Coastal Watershed Council, and the Villa Del Monte Mutual Water Company, which is like near Los Gatos. But I was wondering about the Ama Mutsun Tribal Band because they're not included, and just curious about that.
I know they're involved when they go out to do projects. I hear Tim Carson speak about them often and their role in different projects and contributions. So I know they're heavily involved. That's the extent that I can.
Okay, they're just not listed
They
anywhere.
may not be listed specifically, but
Okay.
when a project is involved that may have some impact to them.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification. Seems like an amazing group.
Okay, sorry. I mean, Rochelle, I see you turned on your mic.
I made a face, yeah. The members of the IRWM are agencies, and they're not tribal. They're,
Oh, I understand. I read all of the plans and all of them. Yes, there's 13 agencies.
They pay into it for their own projects. When they do their projects, they do look at the tribal and, the CEQA and tribal issues, but we don't have, county planning in there either, who would be reviewing the CEQA.
They're invited to the table when these projects go on, but
Yeah, like
They're
the
not part of the
Ecology
list.
Action has like a lot of projects
Right.
in there that are all environmental stewardship. And I know that the tribal band has environmental stewardship projects, but they're not listed. It was just, I was wondering why, but I think he explained that. Thank you.
Any other questions about 4.4? Any public comment? Seeing none. Jennifer, do you want to make a motion on it?
Yes, I would like to approve the MOA. Thank you.
Okay, is there a second?
Oh, second.
Jennifer, Carla. All in favor?
I
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, are we done?
done with that. Just see if there's anybody who wants to comment before we go into public.
Oh, yes. Is there any public comment before we go into closed session? Seeing none?
Okay.
We're going to enter into closed session and then come out and
Yeah.
report.
So we'll ask everybody to, that's not involved with that.
I would love to come. I'll be singing. I'll be singing. I gotta be at choir. Every Tuesday night. Oh, yeah. You don't want to just hang out, do you? People will be hanging out and drinking and waiting. In what?
Yeah, so Emma, you can stay in here.
It was like in 2000. Hi, Ron. Good. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, we'd like